Hello, viewers. My name is Joanna Dos Santos from GDS Counseling, along with my beautiful colleague Brian Andy from BN Counseling. We are here yet again for another discussion, this time on Myers-Briggs, which is a personality assessment that was developed by the theories of Carl Jung. The reason why we bringing this topic today is for some of you viewers might be familiar with it. For those of you that are not, we use this assessment in our private practice. I use it with coaching along with psychotherapy. And I know, Brian, you do too. You're also more certified in it. We are here to talk to you about some of our letters, our strengths and weaknesses, and in some ways how our letters allow us to do our job, how our strengths are able to grow even stronger, and our weaknesses are there to be understood, not necessarily changed. So I am speaking for myself. I know my letters have always been, and I've taken the test numerous times for many years. It's almost like I'm waiting for different letters to come through. Are always INFJ. The INFJ in me is the introvert, intuitive, feeling, judging. Judging does not necessarily mean judging people. It just means time is important, structure is important. Mm-hmm. However, also at the same time, because of COVID, I have realized that my letters have changed and they have become ENFJ. But to bring this forward, my I and my E changes depending on sounds like a particular situation or day. I just took this assessment right before this recording, and it'll end up being INFJ. So I know for you, Brian, you are an ENFJ, which also in some ways changes to an INFJ. So we are both very alike in so many different ways, and hence why we have the careers that we do have, because the INFJs and the ENFJs belong in the healthcare industry. The ability to take care of others, to provide for others, sometimes that can not benefit us personally, because we push ourselves aside, and we are just very forward with this information today. So I'm going to bring it up to you, Brian, so that way you can maybe talk about some of the strengths.
Yeah, I'm wondering maybe I'll just go over the alphabets and just kind of give an overview.
Yes.
So there are 4 alphabets or 4 clusters. There's the E and the I, which is how one is the energy that one receives or responds to in regards to their environment. An introvert, right, takes in information. So just because a person is energetic does not mean, and it's not a quiet person, doesn't mean that person. It's part of being an introvert is how one internalizes the information, mm-hmm. Right? So an introvert essentially is one who's very comfortable being themselves. They're often considered quiet, reserved. They are contemplated, and that's one of their gifts, right? And then the extrovert gets energy from being around people. And just because an extrovert, you may see them as outspoken and social butterflies, they're also what we would call an intimate extrovert, one like myself. I can do that, but I still kind of prefer my inner circle.
Alone time.
Yeah. Right. In fact, what's really interesting about the COVID-19 quarantine is that I have truly enjoyed the quiet time. And I don't feel that I am at loss of interaction simply because of telehealth. I still feel that there is that interaction. Okay, so that's the E and I, and then if you think of the person, the E and F, J, the 2 outer parts, the E and the J for me, or the I and the J, or the I and the P, and E and P are the external parts. Okay, and so the organized, the J and P parts, I'm a J, you're a J, is how we organize our lives. All right.
Time is important.
Yeah. So the J is also one of judging, but in the sense of how we organize, we're schedulers, we are deadline oriented, we are rule followers, and we have to do things with a sense of urgency and immediacy, and we thrive on completion, the Zeigarnik effect, the need for completion. Okay, without the completion, it feels very unrestful, and sometimes some clients who have very, very strong leadership positions may not be able to sleep because it's a thing that they've got to deal with the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Perceivers not that they're not capable of organizing it, but it's not their preferences. They would prefer to be spontaneous, relaxed. Deadline? What deadline? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything is a negotiation. Let me think about it later.
And
So
for us, that's the uncomfortable part. It's completely the opposite.
and so in
Mm-hmm.
couples, sometimes when you see a JNP, which are the very things that attract them, that can be the issue of contention. The J is attracted to the perceiver because, wow, I would love to be able to relax like
Yes.
that and not give up. And the perceiver looks at the J is like, oh my God, I can only imagine how much my life could be better. And there's this admiration for organizing and getting things done. But when the I love you begins, sometimes they go off into different paths. They return
Mm-hmm.
to who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So the awareness is that, it's not so much an opposite, but how we actually complement each other and how we can develop those parts and how do we help each other grow in those parts. And then the inner parts, which are the what we call the core of us, if you think of it as a person, right? The N and S, the intuitive component to us and the sensible component to us. And we all have that. It's just that, like you and I, we are more drawn or adaptable or prone to using the intuitive component of our persona.
Mm-hmm.
And that just boils
Mm-hmm.
down to our wirings. And then our
Mm-hmm.
upbringing, helps develop those parts, right? And our free will,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the intuitive component are it's what we would sometimes call it the inner wisdom. We don't have concrete data, but it is a pattern recognition and assessment of this is what we should be doing. And it is a big picture thinking, and it leaps because it's an idea. And sometimes people can get confused, like, wait, how did you get from here to there?
Mm-hmm.
PhD, it's just
Mm-hmm.
a very big picture and we think in leaps. The scary part to that is that while there's an optimistic component to that, when we are afraid, in danger, in chaos, and life is unsafe, that can go into very quickly into a catastrophic fantasy.
How so?
And,
Yeah.
and, 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 and then if we have had a troubles or some difficulties in our child upbringing, we would use the data from our upbringing to forecast
Uh-huh.
the future or forecast and type uh, stereotype a person.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be very careful about that, right? Let's use what we understand in our base. Let's leap towards the future from where we are now and what we know is true about our personality, not leap from a painful past,
Okay.
right? And a sensible person is a very, what we would say, concrete realist and needs data in that information. And as an intuitive person, when what can scare me in some of the life decision makings, and they become more and more as we go older, is to have concrete data to help me with some of my decisions.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not that is definitely not my dominant and not my preference, but I need to go there. Thinking, especially, right? Like, oh my God, I have no more space. So the next two sets of what we would call in that decision-making process. Do I make decisions with my feelings or do I make decisions with my thoughts?
And because I'm a strong feeler, from what I found out, I'm assuming I make a lot of my decisions based on feelings. However, I don't feel this way. That's the interesting
Well,
part.
there's a highly analytical component to these types, to the
Mm-hmm.
NFJs, right? The analyzing the contemplative component to the INFJ makes you a highly analytical person.
Mm-hmm.
So that now, and it can, and so it's not so much a thinking component, but the incorporation of it. It's not that you don't have it, but when you actually have to make a decision, then that list comes writing, the pros and cons and all that, and that would be a way to help us balance out our feelings because we can feel pulled and overwhelmed by our own feelings. Our
Yes.
sensitivity can actually hurt.
Yes, you're right. Talking about this, so when we find ourselves in, I don't know if I necessarily want to say crises, but decisions that need to be made, and there's such a strong feeling in it, the thinking takes over in order to conclude the decision, to make it final, so that way we can close it and move on to the next, right?
Right. So exactly. So if we think about the types, is how do we get closer? How does our E and I so that we can have them within our resources, within ourselves, moments to be quiet in contemplation. Otherwise, we are
Mm-hmm.
not used to, for extroverts, they may not be used to the quiet. They will need noise, they will need TV, they will need exercise as a way to distract them and their anxieties, from their anxieties and their depression.
Mm-hmm.
Avoidance,
Mm-hmm.
but what we repress will express, and it will be an acting out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about the personality types, right, we may have a dominant wiring or a dominant way of responding, but really how we govern ourselves and how we become who we are and our decision makings boil down to there's the nature and nurture component. We may be wired, I may be wired as an ENFJ, but if I was not raised in an environment or a household or a culture or an education that pushes those parts, I can be an undeveloped ENFJ, or even in the shadows of my personality, right? And so there is the nature component, and then there's the nurturing component. Are those parts of us sharpened into mastery? And then there's what I believe the third part, free will. Depending on our life, circumstances, our protective mechanisms can kick in, and they may have been times in our life when we could not exert or develop our character strengths because of the preserving component, self-preservation component, to belong to a family, to belong to a clique, right? There are certain accommodations and sacrifices, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why there are variations um, between the types. And I think you said 16 personalities. They have a fifth alphabet, right? The A and
Yes,
the
the assertive and the turbulent. Mm-hmm.
correct. So I can be very much, from a place of anxiety, a turbulent, anxiety-ridden ENFJ, which I have had many, many times of my life, and my pragmatics kick in, and I do not present as an ENFJ. I actually present as an ESTJ.
So, oh wow, so different. Yeah. But once again, and I think for our viewers, maybe we did not mention it, is one of, because we use this assessment with a lot of our clients, we use it with ourselves. I don't want to say daily basis, but I definitely am aware as to what letters I have. And I've realized how much it has benefited me, how many times it does benefit my clients. It's very rare, based on my experiences in a private practice and outside of it, to, I think, and I've mentioned that to you before outside of our recording, that out of my entire caseload, I think I've only came across 2 or 3 clients who did not agree with their letters. So the percentages of how likely you agree with your own letters is is extremely high. So for our viewers, is if you ever want to take this assessment, we strongly encourage it, whether it's for yourself, whether it's if you are in therapy, if you are in counseling or life coaching. I use 16personalities.com. It's a very quick assessment that you can take, as well as humanmatrix.com. Those are the two, I know, websites that I usually use.
And there is
And
the
they're free.
Myers-Briggs website in its.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
Um,
Um,
Professionally, I think that both of us use the Myers-Briggs for our patients, and I as a supervisor use it for my clinicians, and it helped
yes.
life
Yeah.
coaches as
Yeah.
well in their process in how they work with their clients. But what I like about the Myers-Briggs, and there are many types of assessments out there, right? I mean, there is the DISC, there is the Clifton Strength Finder, there's the Enneagram. So there are many,
Mm-hmm.
but I happen to stumble upon the Myers-Briggs. It happened to resonate with me in this
Yeah. Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But what I found is, I think both of us, is that it helps identify the character strengths of our patients and the people whom we work with, and very quickly we get to kind of work on resolutions as well, in regards to the problem solving, that to recognize. And for clients who don't understand it, or who are unable to see who they are, we can serve as the eyes, as the nurturers, as the guardians. I see this in you, and I'm going to
Mm-hmm. Yes.
what
Yeah. As to what we notice in therapy with our clients. And You mentioned something earlier, the nature versus nurture, and I'm thinking, I'm a little stuck on it because um, I feel, and we've mentioned this too on this side, is how birth order kind of plays a part into who we become. I've noticed it. So I don't know statistically whether that's how much of it is true. I know from my experiences, I've recognized and I've noticed that those who are, um, I would say probably the eldest children are usually the ones that will be the INFJs, the ENFJs, the caretakers, the providers, the structure, the time is important. Why? Is because if we just put everything aside and think about how we were raised, usually the firstborn is raised with a form of a discipline. Things need to be a certain way. Time is important. I know for myself, I could not leave the house past 9 o'clock at night. So, and that lasted for a long time. So that is important. That was important. And I know based on that, I have become the INFJ, the ENFJ. And when it comes to these problematic situations, conflicts, when I realized I became the ENFJ is why when COVID happened. And I think that's once again because there was anxiety, there was stressors because we were unable to do a lot of things. I was not able to go to my office. I needed to now switch to remote work, which I needed to get to know. Not that I was very fond of it. I'm still not necessarily that fond of it, but I know I need to follow through with it. So there are certain things that I needed quickly to adjust. This is where my thinker took over, needed to do. This is where I started doing the YouTube channel, the podcast. My extrovert almost took over.
Yeah, it was developed. Based on these assessments, right? We are essentially going to be our types as our dominant base ground, right? But certain situations we call upon those parts, and we get to develop those parts. I may be an extrovert, but if I'm in a group of people and they ask, if someone could someone speak about it, answer this question, I will not be the first to answer a question. But let's see who else is answering, right? So yeah. And
but
I
you know
think
what I'm also wondering just a little bit, and I know you've mentioned it too, is those of us who are introverts versus extroverts, how COVID has impacted that personality. And I feel like I'm saying this for myself, for my clients, those clients who are more introverts almost longed for the external, the part of needing to step out, even though they were so comfortable and are comfortable being alone, it's almost too much alone and I need to be out. For those that were extroverts, have become, I mean, you said it, right? That I became almost very comfortable by being introverted or being alone, but it's almost like I've seen two sides. So my extroverted clients had a very difficult time because now they were almost confined to this one place and they were no longer physically connecting with other individuals. So it almost became twofold. The part of enjoying, finally I get to relax, and then the other side of, I really don't like this and I don't know what else to do.
correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and it really depends on the spectrum. Also, I said for myself, right, I really enjoy
Yeah.
being at home, and I guess there's also a life stage component to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just trying to be mindful of time, but I like to cover like the four things that I found that as a person, as a practitioner of the Myers-Briggs in psychotherapy and in helping my clients, is the identification of a character strength, a very, very quick identification of a person's character strength before they even start the therapeutic process, right? So that we can work on the problems, which may take a while, but the strengths will already can kick in and be utilized in the contemplation of resolution. The decision-making process as well for a client, to help them recontextualize or re-see themselves from a helpless position to a position of empowerment, a position of that your capacity to endure, to recreate is greater than your suffering, is greater than your problem.
Yes.
So a recontextualization of their self-concept from a place of strength, right? And for those who are young or contemplating the life transitions, right? It is a very easy and useful tool in regards to the vocation. Like this is
Yes.
what your personality is called upon. And for those who are not there and can't make that leap, how do you become more and practice yourself and being yourself in the career, in the job, in the environment that you're in? Become more of yourself in spite of your environment. A tree doesn't stop growing just because it's not in the right environment that it desires, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take root, it's going to branch out. And some environments may help it thrive. And I think we were just talking about the plants in our offices, right?
The more light, the better
Lighting.
for some plants.
Right. So we can become the light to our own lives and the lights to our own path and a light to our own hopes and dreams and our growth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
So
thank you, Brian, for this conversation. For our viewers who are able to watch it and hopefully comment and share and subscribe to our channel. Once again, my name is Joanna Dos Santos from GDS Counseling, and Brian Nandy, who is my beautiful colleague, partner for many years now, professional partner for VN Counseling.
work
Ah, that
life,
was my Freudian slip. My,
work life, husband and wife.
yes, because our letters are so alike. Once again, we're here to express to you what we are thinking is a good topic, but to also welcome any topics that you guys may have. So we hope to see you next week. Hopefully, you all can join in. We thank you.
Thank you very much, and I wish you well.